Thanks for tuning in to Witch Wednesdays with Steph for a chat about a new witchcraft topic every Wednesday morning. Welcome back to Witch Wednesdays. I'm Steph, and you are listening to episode 89, which is about the water element. And since it is the third in the elements that we've been doing this year, you should know who my co-host is.
It's me, Tara!
Tara's back. She wanted to do all of the elements this year. So you've already heard her on the 2 and then this one, and there'll be another one coming. She was really excited to do all of these episodes, and it's been a while since Tara was a guest, and you guys have been asking about her, where she is and how she's doing. So here she is.
Hi, everybody.
She's alive, working hard, and doing well, other than it feels like summer has slipped away and there's like too much going on, and simultaneously absolutely nothing going on because we're like back in semi-lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's still a weird time.
Such a weird time.
But she is here and excited to chat with you guys. And then
excited, guys.
Yeah, there's a few more episodes that she's planning on being on before the end of this year. So,
but we're gonna keep those a surprise.
Yeah, we're not gonna tell you which ones, other than the Earth element, because that's gonna be the last one.
Well, fine. You know one of them.
But not the others. It's a secret.
Will I be on more? Which ones will I be on? It's a mystery.
It's also a mystery to us, to be honest, because we really sort of like talked about it and figured it out before we, started recording this episode. But it all depends on scheduling and getting it recorded and when we can actually do this, because Tara starts getting busy with it being football season now. So there's just a lot going on. So it all depends on
what's coming.
Yeah, all depends on schedules lining up. So even we're not sure which episode she's going to be on.
Right? It's a surprise to the
world. But we are here and ready to talk about the water element today.
Yes. And
we already did air and fire, and we set these up through this year to associate which season they correspond to. So that's why we are doing water now in the fall season. And we have lots to say about water because I feel like it is the most prevalent that people are just sort of drawn to when they start working in witchcraft, especially just because air and earth are not like as common as fire and water, and fire is a little intimidating to start working with when you are a beginner witch, but water is very calming for a lot of people and easy to get and access and use discreetly. So I think water tends to be a very popular element.
I would say it's very popular for a lot of reasons. When we talked about moon water as one of the best, easiest ways to get started in witchcraft, it really is based on the fact that it's water. Water is definitely one of the easiest ways to kind of dip your toe. Oh, I'm so funny. Into witchcraft.
I should have known you'd do that.
I know, right? So we're going to talk about water, and I think that another reason it's so prevalent is because it's associated with autumn. And I don't know what it is about autumn, but basic bitch witchcraft comes out in autumn in scores, and I love it.
Yeah, I love it too.
Spice and witchcraft light come out in just a plethora everywhere. Decor, foods, candles, drinks. They're just everywhere this time of year, and I am here for it.
Yep, it is definitely a surge in witchcraft popularity this time, but I'm totally here for it too. I welcome it. So there are a lot of different ways to work with water. So we're going to give you the associations, but definitely remember that water can be liquid, of course. That's what we, normally think of, but water is also considered ice and steam. So when we talk about these associations and different ways to work with it, remember that ice and steam can also be used to represent the water element, and those have slightly different energies and different ways to use them, but it is, a wide variety of mediums that you could use.
Yes.
And water is a great carrier of energy. I think that's why it's so useful, not just as water itself representative of that element, but in use with other energies, like carrying the energy of a crystal, for example. Water is really flowing and can move that through. And that's why a lot of people like to do crystal infused waters and those water bottles that have the crystals in there, because water is a great carrier of that energy.
Yep, for sure. Also, if you have like any kind of fragrance oils or essential oils, mixing it with a little bit of water just makes it go so much further, and you can make it into steam. Like you said, it's just got so many uses.
It does. And water is very cleansing. It's one of, the first elements that witches in history really worked with. Was for its cleansing energy, and it can cleanse tools, it can cleanse you in a bath, but that's directly where Christianity got baptisms from, was from pagans using water for the cleansing element. And it cleanses, but also remember that water destroys. So it has both sides of that energy. So it's, for a lot of people, water is like a calming, cleansing energy, but remember that it can also be used to destroy. A lot of people use water to destroy sigils, among other things. But if you think about water as associated with floods and hurricanes, it also can have a very destructive energy to it too.
Or derechos, they also have a lot of water and damage.
Yes, you got hit with that.
You guys can look it up. It's terrible.
Yeah, Tara got hit with that in Iowa last year, right?
Last year, just over 1 year ago today, and we are still cleaning up and repairing. So it's a hurricane level storm without the hurricane inland. So it was fun.
Yeah, strange phenomenon in the middle of Iowa.
It is. It's very strange, but it was very destructive, and water played a huge part in washing away several thousand trees and destroying homes and all of that. And speaking of water being destructive, it's also associated with feminine energy, which I love, because we can come and we can destroy the world.
Isn't that the truth? You're welcome, world.
There's a reason. So water is considered a feminine element, has a feminine energy, which I love.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, feminine receptive energy, which so it's in Wiccan traditions, it's associated with the goddess.
Always the goddess, moon. It's actually also associated with twilight as the moon starts to peak. So that's kind of cool. Autumn, which is why we're doing it now. Ta-da!
Yep, and it is associated with the direction of the west, and the cups suit in tarot, which makes sense.
Which is also why it's considered associated with the chalice, which cups was originally the chalice in the tarot set, and cauldrons, which is another reason why beginner witches so often can use water so well, because usually one of the first tools, I know a lot of people don't like this term, but baby witches or new witches get is either a chalice or a cauldron, because it's so symbolic and so versatile. And then they start working with water right away.
Yeah, I think it's a very intuitive step to take, and doesn't need a lot of instruction or reading, studying done to learn how to use water. I think we just kind of do it.
Yep, for sure.
So the colors that are associated with water are exactly as you would imagine.
Guys,
which are blue, all shades of blue, deep blue, deep olive green, turquoise, aqua, gray. All of those connect with different areas and different types of water, because broad spectrum of where you would find those waters. Just thinking about even different areas in the ocean, versus what ice looks like, streams or ponds, all different colors of the blue, green, gray family.
I was gonna say the Caribbean Ocean looks a lot different than the coast of Alaska. So
very true.
Just saying, it's very different colors, but still water. So that's why there's such a huge range in the watercolor associations.
And crystals are very similar in that they are exactly what you would expect, which would be pearl, moonstone because of water's association with the moon and tides, amethyst, tourmaline, opal, aquamarine, quartz, all things that are sort of in a blue color family or associated with water. And they're not crystals, but there are other, natural elements that you can use to associate with water, which would be coral, shells, or river stones.
River stones, also seaweed, both dried seaweed and fresh seaweed. You can work with quite a bit using water. So,
yeah. And as for other herbs, they are lemon balm, which is like very leafy. Anything that's really leafy is associated with water. Belladonna, and anything that blooms at night, like night blooming jasmine, because again of those moon associations. Periwinkle, spearmint, coltsfoot, lotus, and reed. And of course, those two should not surprise you because they grow in water. So.
One that I was surprised by when I first got started is, and I shouldn't have been, is aloe. Because of the water thickening in the plant. Because if you break off an aloe leaf, you can actually spread the liquid on yourself to soothe burns, among other things. But aloe is a very powerful water association because of all the liquid inside the plant. And they also tend to bloom in the fall.
They do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, unless you grow it indoors, and then it can bloom whenever you want.
The animals associated with water are fish, bears. People are sometimes surprised by bears, but just think of like bears catching salmon upstream. That's what they do. Snakes, scorpions, seals, dolphins, seabirds, and horses. And people are usually surprised by horses too, but you just have to look to mythology and pagan origins for that. Horses are always water based. There's all sorts of mythological stories and history that associate horses and water. It goes back a long time.
There's a ton of them. Well, and it's not that surprising then that the zodiac signs are the Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer. So if you think of the list of animals she just gave you, that you can see the correspondences going there.
Yep, Scorpios and crabs
Scorpio.
And fish. Yep. Very, very true. And we've mentioned this before, but to use the zodiac signs, you don't have to be a Pisces, Cancer, or Scorpio to work with the water element. You may be more naturally in tune if your sun or moon or rising is in one of those three, that it might just come easier to you to work with water, but you don't have to be one of those signs. In order to work with water, you can just sort of use their energy. I don't know, so a few episodes ago, there was a zodiac signs in witchcraft episode, and that went over the different ways that you can use that, and you can work with that zodiac sign while it's in the sun, that 30-day span there. But you can also work with it while it's in that moon phase, and it changes every 3 days or so. The moon goes into a different sign, so that's a good way to sort of combine the water energy with that astrological element and work with water during those signs.
And we've talked about before, I'm such a Libra that both my sun and moon sign are in Libra, but I'm not avoiding water. Like, it's way too useful, and I use it all the time in my witchcraft. So
yeah, and I'm a Scorpio, so I'm pretty in tune with water and use it a lot and like it, and it's actually funny because I don't like big bodies of water. So, I like, using water that comes out of the tap and water around my house, but I do not go in like oceans or lakes or anything like that. I have a very low, as in zero, water to body count content. People seem to have this like acceptable level of dead bodies that can be in their water. Like, people don't go swimming in a pool with a dead body in it, but there's definitely dead bodies in an ocean, and people go swimming in that. So there's like a correlation there of what people consider like their acceptable dead body level, and mine is zero. So
I think that's hilarious, because one of the reasons I'm so busy in the summer is I kayak like 2 to 3 times a week. So my body count water is quite high. I don't think there's necessarily people floating in most of the lakes and rivers of Iowa. I'm not saying there's never been bodies in there, but I know that we've found dead animals before in the water. You just keep going.
Yeah, and I'm by Lake Michigan and the Chicago River, and
Yeah, you probably
there's
have more bodies.
absolutely bodies in both of those. So yeah, I like the water element, and I like working with it like in my own home, but as far as like getting into large bodies of water like that, I won't do it. It's
I
not for
love
me.
getting into large bodies of water. I love kayaking, paddleboarding. Most of the summer I spend on the water or planning a trip on the water. So
Yeah, which is funny, exact opposite, but
yep, like always. Water is also the base ingredient for almost all magical teas and potions. And we all know I'm a huge tea fan. Huge tea fan.
yeah, so lots of ways that you use
water. I use water all the time. I'm not avoiding that sucker. I'm inviting it in.
As far as other associations, the spirits, we did fish and bears for animals, but for the spirits, they are undines, sea serpents, mermaids, silkies, and sirens. So nothing surprising on that list either.
And the planets associated are the moon, not surprising there, Neptune, which I hope is not a surprise, and Pluto, which is totally a planet and counts.
Tara will defend Pluto until the day she dies.
I will. I'm willing to wrestle for it.
And the magical uses associated with water are for emotions, healing, sorrow, intuition, fertility, and love. But again, people use water for all sorts of different purposes. So those are just some of the magical associations, but you can use it in any way that you see fit for any type of spell work.
Yep. Scrying's very, very popular. Like I said, magical teas, potions. If you're setting up an altar, a lot of people have water on their altar. In fact, I can't think of a single person with an altar that doesn't have some form of water on it.
Yeah, very true.
So
there are quite a few ways besides just placing on your altar that you can connect to water if you're feeling slightly disconnected from it, or just want to balance your energies and your elements. Working with the moon is a very popular one because, again, controls all the tides on the planet. So close association between the moon and water, which, again, you can create moon water, but doing any sort of moon, working with the moon in general. But moon water tends to be the most popular and easiest one.
Yep.
You can also, along the same lines, create solar water, thunder and lightning water, which are very intense for personal power. I'm going to get into types of water in just a minute and go over all of them, but thought I would go over connecting first. Enchanting jewelry, we talk about in each episode. And the water is specifically associated with silver and copper. So if you have any sort of silver or copper jewelry, then you can definitely use water to enchant those, to charm them in some way. Some people, when they charm their jewelry, will use one specific element that they feel most connected with and do that for all of their jewelry. But some people do break it down by metal.
I break it down.
Do you? Yeah.
Yep.
Water for silver jewelry.
I found that for me personally, it works better because I used to do moon energy for everything, and it just wasn't holding on some of them. It wasn't working for me. So I started splitting it up by jewelry type and stone type, that kind of thing. And some of them just work better to hold different elements. Another thing to kind of be aware of is water can actually damage some jewelry depending on the metals used and the stonework. So don't just let it soak in water.
Yeah, always a good warning.
Just friendly warning. You'll destroy shit.
Yep, and that applies to crystals, of course, too, because you can imbue water with energies of a lot of different things, but crystals specifically. But I talked about this in the health and safety and protection episode, but crystals can leach things. Certain ones can leach toxic elements into the water, or the water will just dissolve them and destroy them if they are salt based. So you do need to be careful and always look up the properties of your crystal before you plunk it into water.
Yeah, copper can leach into water as well. That's why I was saying be careful there.
Yeah, definitely be careful because you don't want to be ingesting any of that, but you also don't want to damage the crystals that you do have. So just make sure you look that up. And if you want to imbue water with the energy of a certain crystal that's not water safe, like malachite, you can just put it next to it. That's fine. Yep. And it will still work. So another way to connect with water is, of course, ritual baths and washes, which very, very popular to draw a bath and cleanse that way. But washes are especially useful, like floor washes, washing your tools. We talk about cleansing energetically, and we've talked about, smoke cleansing in the home, but water cleansing is just as effective. And some people prefer that over smoke or fire. So water is a great one.
I love me a good ritual bath before our ceremony.
I am not a bath person. No surprise there.
Well, funny story. I don't have a bathtub. So
that's true. You don't. I forgot about that.
When I got my place, I loved everything about it. It wasn't until I moved in and every single person as a housewarming, I feel like, got me a bath bomb because they know I like baths. And that's when I realized I didn't have a tub. So yeah, nice house, bathtub.
I didn't. I got you liquor because I know you better.
Well, that and we just drank the liquor then. So
we did. So it's present for me too.
It worked out well.
Another popular form of connecting with water is scrying, which is staring into a surface until images start to come with you and then deciding what those images mean. So we've talked about scrying with tea leaves and by staring into a crystal ball, and water is another popular way where you stare into, like, pour water into a bowl or onto a plate and stare into that surface of the water in the same way that you would a crystal ball until images start to come to you. It's especially popular against a black surface. So like a black plate or a black bowl or a cauldron is a very popular method of scrying because, again, it doesn't involve buying tools or having a lot of witchy items, especially if you're in the broom closet. Water and a black plate are easily available.
It's also really helpful if you have issues with meditating to stare into water, especially against a black surface, same as with scrying, but you're clearing your mind, not looking for images. You're just focusing on the serenity of the water. I meditate with water.
I don't usually have a issue just meditating. So
you don't have ADHD up the wazoo?
I do not. I can usually focus pretty well.
Yeah, that's not me.
Another way to connect with water is, of course, as the method of destruction. So you can use that to destroy sigils and petitions. There are a lot of ways to, release the energy when a spell is done. But a lot of times for sigils and petitions specifically, you have to destroy them in some way to release that energy and send that intention out. And we've talked about, burning those things, but destroying them with water is another way to do that. So people will, if they're, environmentally safe, will release that into like a stream, or just let the water sort of dissolve the writing that's on the paper. Or if it's a tiny little piece of paper, people flush it. Popular option.
I have never done that, so good to know.
Yep, especially if you're like trying to destroy something or specifically get something negative, like a negative situation or person out of your life, then writing that down and flushing it. If it's like a tiny piece of paper, please do not be flushing like giant pieces of paper down your toilet and then blaming me that your toilet is all clogged up because you flush paper. No, like tiny little pieces of paper I'm talking about, or writing it on actual toilet paper. People do that too, and then wad that up and flush it to get it out of your life.
Yeah, I grew up not connected to city water, so if you are on a septic tank, you got to be a lot more careful on what you're flushing. So think of other options.
Very true.
Well water and septic tanks are kind of finicky, but I guess if you're in city water, I've never thought of that because I didn't grow up on city water. That's interesting.
Yeah. Another popular way to connect to water is using sea salt. So salt is, of course, very popular in witchcraft. Lots of uses of salt. We have a whole episode on this, so no need to go over all the ways to use salt. But sea salt, obviously, is connected to the water element. So if you can't be carrying a vessel of water with you, sometimes sea salt is just easier to carry around for use. So that's another way to represent the water element. If you don't want to be just like leaving a bowl of water out on your altar, you can leave a little dish of sea salt instead. And lastly, of course, is making tea that Tara already talked about. It's a very popular way to connect with water, but it's also a popular way to use the steam from that to open your third eye, which would just be like letting the steam sort of hit that forehead area to open up your third eye and do more intuition type work.
And there are tons of tea recipes out there that are specific for the third eye. And I just want to give a little warning. When you are looking into third eye tea, some of those teas are not meant to be drank. They're not going to hurt you, but they're going to taste disgusting. So please read through what all is in the tea, because I know a few people that have tried to drink third eye tea and it's not intended for that. It tastes disgusting, and I speak from experience. So there are third eye teas that are meant to be drank, and most of them will say after you hold it in, you sip the tea until your third eye is open. But some of them will just say, let the steam gather and open your third eye, inhale the steam until it's gone. And a lot of times they won't specifically say don't drink it, but they'll say once the steam is no longer present, your third eye should be open. That's a big hint. Don't drink that tea. It's going to taste gross.
Excellent warning.
I just thought everyone should be aware.
Yeah, Tara's definitely a act first, read instructions later type of person.
True. I read the instructions and then I think what should come naturally next, and sometimes that's not what comes naturally next.
Yeah, so she talks from experience.
Yeah, I mess up a lot. It happens,
guys. So the other, well, we have a couple other things that we wanted to mention because Tara wants to talk about Druidry in her new forest study. But I want to mention the types of water, and I'm just going to run through these alphabetically. And as always, I will have the show notes at witchwednesdays.com and over on Patreon, so you can catch these specifically. You don't have to write down what I'm about to say, but each of these types of water has their own properties associated and better spells that it will work for. So I just wanted to run through those quickly so you can use these different types of water if you would like. Ta-da! So first is creeks, which would also be streams, which are very clean. So they are used for purifying and cleansing. Dew, like the dew that's on the grass in the morning, is connected with the fae, beauty, freshness. It's used for health, beauty, and eyesight. Fog and mist are used for balance, partnership, creativity, and insight workings.
Nice.
Harbor water catches water, so it's used for abundance spells and also prosperity, but also banishing, because you can think of ships coming in and out. So that's what that water can be used for. Ice can be used for transformational workings and releasing workings, like when it thaws. So it's not just the ice block, but as it thaws, it can be used for that sort of transformational aspect. Pond and lake water is very still, so that is used for peace, calm, self-reflection. It can also bring steadiness and slowness to a situation. Rain is used for energy, protection, and cleansing. River water is used for personal power. Seawater is cleansing because of the salt content, but also for power, because obviously the ocean is hugely powerful. Yeah. Snow is for quiet, calm, and transformation. Spring water is one of the purest forms of water, so that's used for growth, prosperity, cleansing, and protection. Swamp water is nasty, so it is very binding.
Gross,
and
guys.
Yeah, it's really gross. So it's very binding and can lock people or situations into place, and it's very irritating to people. So it's definitely more on the baneful side of workings, but also for trying to like stop a person in their tracks or like stop their bad habit. Like maybe you need to stop somebody from smoking. The swamp water, definitely the way to go. Tide or tidal water is for meditation and spirit work and connecting with the sort of in between. Because if you think of tides like going in and out, high tide is like a sort of in between time.
Yep.
Waterfalls are for power, energy, and success workings. And lastly, well water, which is for healing spells, wishing, of course, and intuition. So all those types of water, lots of different options. But again, I will have those listed over at witchwednesdays.com. So you can check that list out again and pick which type of water would work best for your spell.
And if you can't get a specific type, as always, go with what your intuition says to use. Like, don't try and travel 100 miles if you don't have a car to get to a specific creek that has fresh water.
Right. Yeah, you can make anything work.
Yes. And as Steph said, I have been studying the Druid belief system this year. It's been really eye-opening for me. And everything they have at the base of all the beliefs that I've been reading about is a threefold system. So they have 3 base elements. They do 3 levels of manifestation, 3 rays of light to illuminate the world. But it's kind of interesting. So their elements don't exactly align with the 4 traditional elements that we've been talking about, but they do have an element called Guyar, which literally means blood in Old Welsh, but it is taken to mean the water or fluidity as an element itself. It's a source of change, motion, growth, and decay. Because you don't think about it, but water really does help with the decay process. And so it ties in a lot with what we've been talking about with the different aspects of water itself as a witch element. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I might talk more about it in the other elements as well, but it's really a way to break down the world around us. So it's associated with ancestors, water, blue, sea, life. It's also associated with the past, which I thought was really interesting. The half moon, rather than a full or a new moon, it's the half moon because it's a time of change. And it's also associated with the branch of, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I apologize, Druidry. I say Druid, and I can say that. I cannot pronounce whatever.
Yeah, we were trying to figure that. We think it's Druidry. Druidry is what it's called.
If it's different, please let us know, because I've been reading this book, and he gives pronunciation guides on everything else. I'm reading the Druidry Handbook by John Michael Greer, and it's very fascinating, guys. But yeah, I can't pronounce half the things in this book. It's fine. But it's just a really fascinating breakdown because their water and blood incorporates more than the water element because there's only 3 rather than 4 elements. But it goes really deep into, but a lot of the associations I've been reading about correspond directly with what I consider the witch element of water. So it's just kind of fun to see how a different belief system ties in so well with witchcraft.
Yeah, and Druidry is kind of a difficult path to study because there's just not that much information, because a lot of it, they didn't write anything down, and anything that, was destroyed because Druids and Christianity butted heads directly.
Yeah.
And they were killed, most of the Druids. So
they were actually hunted down.
Yes, exactly. So there is not a ton of information, and a lot of what is available to study has just kind of like been pieced together, but nobody's like 100% positive on most of these aspects. So definitely a tricky but very interesting and ancient practice to study. So if you have any interest in the Druids, that practice, then let me know, because Tara has been studying, and we can have her guest co-host another episode in 2022, talking more about what she has learned for Druids, and some books you can check out and areas to study if you are interested in that path. Because yeah, definitely an interesting one.
It's definitely a very interesting one. And if you have a thing for languages, I would say power to you, because one of the hardest parts for me is they have so many different concepts that I don't want to say decided on, but basically assigned. Old Welsh or Celtic words to describe or to define as. And I am not a language person. So this whole learning another language while I'm trying to learn the concepts has been a eye-opening yet difficult experience.
I can imagine.
I can barely pronounce English words, guys. Like,
but yeah, that would be, it's like twice as much work.
Yeah. And the one good thing about this book and a lot of ones I've read is they're very open about the fact that they're like, this best encompasses the concept we're trying to do. So this is the word we're using. We've all agreed this is what the word means. And I'm like, that's cool, but I don't even know how to say that word, let alone what it means. But it's been very fascinating, guys.
Yeah, definitely something we can go more into. Because see, that's, the fun of witchcraft is that there's like constantly more to learn and study. Like you're never going to be done. And some people can be really frustrated by that. I think sometimes beginner witches jump in like wanting to learn everything right away and thinking that there's going to be like an endpoint and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm like graduated. I'm a, full-fledged witch now and know everything. It's like never gonna happen. It'll never, ever, ever happen. But for people who like studying and always learning something new, then it's a really fun craft to get into because there's just constant new things you can learn. I know nothing about druids. Absolutely nothing.
Well, and
I'm learning all my information from Tara.
I was going to say, I think we talked about this briefly last year, is it's good to have goals in life and in witchcraft. And so one of my goals this year was to learn more about elemental work and incorporate more in elemental work. And I just stumbled upon a druid practice that corresponded really well with what I was working on. It just drew me in, and now I'm studying it. So
yeah, and I think that
to me, and I'm embracing that. So that's what witchcraft's about in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's definitely things come to you in witchcraft when you need them.
Yes.
Like I think
I completely agree with that. As long as you're open to it, witchcraft will constantly help you evolve your life for the better.
Yeah, and when you're ready, because I think if Druidry had come to you, 2 years ago, you wouldn't have picked it up. It wouldn't have been, relevant at that time. So I think things sort of present themselves to you when they are most relevant in your life and most useful, which is really interesting. But like a fun sort of way that it evolves, so things just sort of appear on your doorstep.
Yep. And like I said, this just happened to correspond with something I was looking into for my personal practice, and it's just led to a whole new interesting path for me. So don't be afraid to embrace change, guys. That's what water's all about.
Excellent transition.
Hey, I didn't even make a pun that time.
Oh, look at Tara go. She's totally on top of her game today.
It's because I had my coffee.
Yeah, she finished her was in the process of finishing her coffee right when we started recording this. So it's kicking in now. You may have
heard me sipping. I was drinking my coffee out of a really fun, colorful, twisted straw.
Oh, well, it just makes it so much better.
Right?
But that is, I think, everything that we have to say about the water element. But again, if you have any questions or need a repeat of the things that I said, that will all be listed on the website. And definitely let us know over on Instagram, Witch Wednesdays Podcast, if you are interested in this sort of look at Druidry, not like a whole deep dive, because that would be like impossible. But if you would like a more in-depth episode on the Druid belief system and practice, then we can make that happen in 2022. I have not really figured out what I'm doing with the podcast in 2022, but
this would help, guys.
I do know that Tara is learning and studying. So if you want an episode on that, let us know and we will figure out how to make that happen.
We're all about making things work.
That is everything that I have for this week, and I will see you next week.
Bye, guys. It was good talking with you again.
And she'll be back soon.
Yes, I will. But how soon? Nobody knows.
It will be a surprise. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Need even more witchcraft? Subscribe to Patreon for exclusive bonus content 3 times a week and order Sabbath boxes and other supplies at witchwednesdays.com. Be sure to follow on Instagram at Witch Wednesdays Podcast.